JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the only show where you can literally string together a random sentence made out of anything and it'll still be a JoJo's reference. I've only just started Steel Ball Run, but I'm pretty sure Jesus is a reference. In 1987, Hirohiko Araki would release JoJo's Bizarre Adventure into the world with the first 2 issues readily available. From then on out, he didn't miss a single deadline in his entire career, and up until about 2005, he was doing that weekly. You can't do any of that without sheer dedication and passion for your work. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure follows the story of the Joestar family, starting in 1880s England and moving all around the world and at different points in time in the subsequent parts. You might ask me, how would I describe the series? And I would have to point you to my favourite description of the series of all time. Greedy bisexual man becomes a vampire and torments a family for generations. I'm not joking when I say that is almost a perfect description. The series is broken up into parts, and if you say seasons, the fans will shoot you. Each part brings a new protagonist and a new villain. You can sometimes have returning characters, but the main JoJo of each part will always be different. The name JoJo comes from every main character having a nicknameable first and last name. So like, for example, Joseph Joestar or Jotaro Kujo. The first 2 parts follow the power system of Hamon, which is pretty much just breathing sun karate. And then from part 3 onwards, they use the power system called stands, which is a physical manifestation of a person's life energy. If you don't understand it by the way I just said it, fair enough. Imagine you've got your own little ghost fighter. That's basically what it is. Some are super overpowered. Things like time manipulation is probably one of the biggest ones in the series. But then you've also got strategic stands that you're going to have to wait for certain situations for it to actually start working. The original story went up to part 6, and then from part 7 they moved on to a new universe, free from all influence of the other parts. The only things that they kept were the power system, stands, the naming of stands, which I will get into later, and the naming of characters, things like Joestar or Zeppeli. JoJo's is still publishing today. Currently we're on part 9. In English, we are on part 7, and only just. The original release of part 7 in Japanese was in 2004. For context, I was born in 2005. It's older than me. But with the Steel Ball Run anime adaptation well on its way, I thought I'd just go over my recent obsession with the series and why I think you should watch it or read it, you know, whatever you want to do. Although I should mention, most of my opinions on this will only be up to part 6. I just started part 7, and I'm also probably only going to talk really in depth about the anime because that's how I viewed the series. I mean, that's what's playing on the TV right now, so most of the video will be somewhat spoilery. I'll go from like least spoilers first. This will be things like the background, things that are just like part of the series. But the further we go on, it'll get into more detailed stuff like the anime, specifics about that sort of thing. A lot of my video was researched on the JoJo's wiki and is the perfect place to get in-depth detail about the series. If you would like to go check it out yourself, the link will be in the description. But I think it's best if you went into the series completely blind like I did. I had no expectations of the series and I loved every single second of it. And I think that's how you should do it as well. But let's get into the things that I love about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. If you spend even like a moment, a modicum of time in this fandom, you'll see someone commenting on something, and it could be the smallest detail. Someone would comment, is that a JoJo's reference? This is simultaneously one of the most fun things about the series, and it can also be extremely exhausting as well. I mean, if I had $1 for every time someone did the reference thing or tried to incorporate a title of like a stand name or something into a random Instagram comment, I would be like the hell-spawn child of Elon Musk and Bill Gates. Like, let's say for example, someone's got a hydraulic press and they're trying to break a diamond. Someone will always comment, "Diamond is unbreakable," like it's the pinnacle of comedy. It was funny the first 20 times I saw it, Beyond that, it got really annoying. But the naming of characters after music feels like an archive of Araki's. Like, what he loves, he's presenting for us. This can range from anything like songs, albums, musicians. One of the most notable songs being Shine On You Crazy Diamond. For albums, you have Sticky Fingers, not the Australian indie band, or The Gold Experience by Prince. And then finally, for actual musicians, you have people like Dio, REO Speedwagon, Metallica, Steely Dan, King Crimson, to really make a long list short. And if you want to see like all the references, like, believe me, there are a lot, you can find that on the JoJo's wiki page, and I would really recommend that you go into it and really look at it. A few of the characters are even designed off of other pieces of media, you know, actors, musicians, other mangas. Like the first protagonist, Jonathan Joestar, he follows the design of 80s action stars, people like Schwarzenegger or Stallone. He's also influenced by another popular manga at the time, Fist of the North Star, which I'm sure a lot of people know. It's well known that Part 4's main villain, Yoshikage Kira, is based off of David Bowie, and that Jotaro Kujo in Part 3 is popularly based off of Clint Eastwood. While looking at them, you probably don't think about it that way. I mean, I sure didn't when I finished the show. But the more I searched it up and the more I found out, the visual subtext makes you look at them differently after the fact. I love the fact that over time you could see Araki get better at drawing and really settle into his own and start to create characters that look more unique and take on a style that really no one else has. You start at part 1 where it looks decent, but you've got some panels that are a bit interesting. But it doesn't pop out or stand out as much as it really could. But you move on, and part by part, it moves away from hulking masculine men into something more iconic, incorporating high fashion and ditching societal norms to create characters that are perceived to be androgynous. It's a part of the series that I think can be quite polarizing. Seeing males depicted the way they are from like part 4 and onwards, really, it can be a shock to some people. I'll try and get it up and a bit close and hope that it focuses. But look at Josuke. That is a teenage man. When I first watched the series, and this is like before he spoke, I genuinely thought that this was a girl. I mean, if you look at his like curved design...
You're gay! He's gay! I'm not gay.
Pause. His heart-shaped jacket, and obviously the hair. The hair is the big part here. I really recommend that you don't talk shit about his hair. I did it one time and it wasn't great. I said one thing about his hair. Look what he did! Look at my face! I think the fact that these were done so early, societally at the time, really makes it special. Like, this could have been so important to so many people at the time. I love that as the series still runs today, it still decides to push that line, and it's another reason why I have massive respect for Araki. He obviously has a love for breaking the standard gender norms and allowing people to feel comfortable within themselves, which he openly stated in a 2019 interview that he, quote, wanted to portray a character with an androgynous image that went beyond the standard definition of gender. The topic of discussion was Anasui, or Anastasia, depending on which version of JoJo's you watch. Jolene's really weird murderer love interest in part 6. But for the topic of androgynous image, I think that Anasui really fits it well. Obviously the series is very LGBT positive, and if after all that I've said, you don't think that it is quote-unquote gay, in some way, shape or form, Dio, the big muscly man from parts 1 to 3, is bisexual. Suck on that. And if you were Poochie, I'm sure you would. Of course, there have been massive discussions in the community about the LGBT theming in both the manga and the anime, and I would really recommend Hamon Beat's video on the subject. Building upon the fashion, it is without doubt some of the best, if not the best, in manga, period. You know, stuff that's been recognized in the high fashion world, with brands such as Gucci working with Araki in 2013. This factor sort of piggybacks off the last point of breaking gender norms, but Araki is able to put his characters in such outlandish, such outrageous fits, stuff that breaks the cultural norm in general, and it becomes hard to see whether or not it's feminine or masculine. His art itself is based off of high fashion designers like Versace or Vogue and artists like Antonio Lopez. Simply looking through the reference list of Golden Wind, you can find inspiration for outfits, hairstyles, poses, all drawn from real life. And I feel like that's another reason why JoJo stands out so much. If you look at any of his work, it feels like you're looking at fine art. And to an extent, you basically are. In April of 2003, at the Odermatt Vidovi Gallery in Paris, Araki decided to showcase his artwork publicly for the first time, in a country that didn't even really know what JoJo's was, but loved the art. Another big part of Araki's art is his choice of colour palette. He never really sticks to a canon colour palette for his characters. I mean, if you look at any of his art, the characters usually have different designs and colours every single time. Like this Abakio and Fugo cover. They're in a bold red colour palette almost everywhere, making it feel very pop arty. Then you get to the anime where they now live in set colours, but can still be different from the colour pages for the manga. I love the art so much that I bought the JoJo A Go-Go Illustrations book. I even have this stuff set as my wallpaper. Like, it's actually the best. I'm obsessed with it. I mentioned posing before, and that's another big part of the show and manga. It's so big that a fan even made a song about the posing, which I'm sure you've heard, even if you don't know the series.
What the fuck?
Again, these were inspired by the things I said previously. And apart from the Polnareff pose, which is what I just did there, I have attempted multiple poses that are a part of the show. I'm going to start getting into the anime now, and I think this is where you should click off, just to experience it for yourself. But if you're here to stay, then let's get into the show. In 2012, the JoJo's anime was announced at the Hirohiko Araki JoJo's exhibition, and is how I viewed the series, and I think is the best way to view the series. So, let's get into what I love. A part of the series I really couldn't get into until we started getting into the anime was how amazing the music made for the show is. And this doesn't even relate to just the intros. I'm talking about like anything and everything made for the show is incredible. A minute while I completely geek out on this. Openings in anime, and really any animated show, are super important. They can give you little clues as to what's going to happen, and also, and most importantly, give you some of the best music ever. So what does JoJo start with? This sounds awesome! I'm not joking when I say I have opened my phone, went onto Spotify and played a playlist of every single intro and outro to the series in my own time. I even sing them in broken Japanese and pretend I know full well what the song means. The visuals to these things? Absolute cinema. Pull up the Scorsese pic. Like, normally with 3D CGI animation, it looks kind of rough.
How dare you!
Also, just a personal thing, and I mentioned this sort of somewhat before. When you're doing an opening, I love when they do little foreshadow moments, like things that when you start watching the show, you'll have no idea what's going on. It's just an opening to you. And you'll get beyond halfway, and then you'll be like, oh, it's outlining the show. I think that can sometimes be the coolest thing about an intro. All this while being just a minute 30 long. And then, whenever the intro would play for the final time, they would add sound effects to the intro, and it would really give it that extra punch. And my favorite intro to the series, it doesn't even have the cool 3D style to it. The first opening of part 4. The show would have a stint where the studio who was doing the 3D openings, Kamikaze Doga, was busy at the time. So parts 4 to 5 only have 2D intros. You'd think, oh, so those ones maybe aren't as cool or unique as the 3D openings. Wrong! The openings were still incredible. I will say, like, the 3D was missed for me, but they more than made up for that in a run of intro music that was so godly that if you showed it to a young Victorian child, they would explode on the spot. And we haven't even gotten into the show. When you actually get in and start watching, you are greeted with more amazing music with the themes. Yugo Kanno might be the equivalent of Mozart writing and composing these themes. I would bet my dollars that I made from being Elon Musk's and Bill Gates' hellspawn kid that you will have heard JoJo's theme. Even if you haven't seen the show, you know JoJo's theme. I'm willing to bet that some of you have even heard the part 4 theme.
Going now! Going now!
Part 4 has the best soundtrack. Oh, I said it. It's the best one. It doesn't come close. All right, I'm done. I'm done. No. Actually, I lied. We've got to get into the outro music. When Araki was writing various parts, he was listening to very specific music at the time, which he has catalogued. And that plays at the end of every JoJo's episode. So why do we have to talk about it? The to be continued meme was a JoJo's reference? When this first played, my jaw dropped. I could not believe that every single time I was watching a Vine compilation on YouTube and seeing a to be continued meme, that it linked back to JoJo's. It's probably like the most well-known part about the show. And then you go into part 3 with Walk Like an Egyptian, which is a certified banger. And then the second outro is Last Train Home. Alright, let's move on. The idea of JoBros stems from Zeppeli and Speedwagon from part 1. They're the side characters who will ride or die for our JoJo. I think in part 1, they're probably not utilised enough, but when you get to about part 3, that's when they really come into their own. Part 2, you have people like Caesar or Lisa, and everyone's favourite German saluter, von Stroheim. I'm not even joking, watch the show. I think that part 3 and 5s are probably my personal favourite groups, or JoBros. And I think what makes a great team is how much time you spend with them, how well developed their backstory is, and really their chemistry with each other. Part 3 and 5 do that better than any other part. I like 3 because essentially everyone is building a bond with each other over a span of 50 days. Some start off as enemies such as Kakuing and Polnareff, and then others like Jotaro and Joseph, they have familial connection. But apart from that, they have no interest in each other whatsoever, even if it's a grandson to grandfather dynamic. And their only common goal at first is to save Holly, Jotaro's mother and Joseph's daughter. A common complaint with part 3 is that it's a bit too long and there are way too many stand fights. I wouldn't necessarily say that those voices are wrong, but I would say that this makes the time spent with our characters feel that much more impactful. Most team members are in the squad by episode 5, and I think it's Polnareff who shows up last. And he ends up being, you know, my favourite. And then you have people, or not people, a dog like Iggy, who comes in, I think, at the second half of part 3. We spend a ton of time with these people, and their little quirks and moments that they have really sell the family aspect of the JoBros. For example, the many times that Polnareff goes to take a piss subplot. If you think I'm joking, it happens more than once. The moment that really hit home about part 3 for me was actually something they added in the anime that wasn't a part of the manga. Spoiler alert. Dio's defeated, and Jotaro and Joseph are on a plane back home. During the flight, Jotaro pulls out a picture of the group together, and he smiles to himself. If you watched the season and you know Jotaro as a character, that moment is so incredibly special. Part 5's team I like for very similar reasons, but in moments, and I think maybe even overall, I think the Part 5's team's probably better. I think the backstory of each member is really interesting, and how unique they are from one another is a big part of why I enjoy it. I especially like that for some of the members of the Bucciarati team, that their stands are molded from personal experiences. It makes them so much cooler in action. A lot of people will say that the JoBros of Part 5 outshine Giorno, our main JoJo of the part. And to that I would say, that's just how good they are. I mean, you have people like Bucciarati, Fugo, Narancia, Abakio, and Mista, and Trish later down the line. I mean, that's a stacked team. Plus, you get returning members like Koichi and the GOAT, Polnareff, in the later half of the part. I love you forever, Polnareff. The JoBros are the life form that keeps JoJo together, and I think it's really what can make or break a part in the series. The main character is usually the selling point of the entire series. Think about any anime, animated series, any TV show. Your main never changes. But JoJo's does it differently. You start off with Jonathan Joestar, who is your fairly typical gentleman archetype sort of character, upholding his like righteous values and beliefs and all that sort of thing. Normally it'd be a little bland, sort of played out, but when you mix in Dio, who is like the biggest hater in all of fiction, I think it evens out and really makes it interesting. Then in the final fight, spoilers again, Jonathan takes on a fair bit of damage from Dio's laser eyes. And as he lays there dying, he cradles Dio's head. You're thinking, he's gonna get out, right? No, he dies. At the time, it was almost unheard of to kill off your main character, especially when we've only spent a really brief time with that main character. But it did leave Araki open to making a fresh start. He didn't have to be held down by the previous character's values or beliefs or even characteristics at all. He could start anew every single time. From part 2, you move on to Joseph Joestar. He is probably the most removed from Jonathan you could possibly get. He's brash, he's cocky, he's basically a clown. And what would normally be like pretty shit characteristics in a character sort of become really entertaining when you realize how much fun he actually is to watch. We then get to part 3, going to Japan and meeting Jotaro Kujo, who is an interesting fella.
Shut up! Get out of my face, you bitch!
That was to his mother. Now, obviously, he's a very moody, mean teenage man, but that doesn't mean he is emotionless. In fact, he shows many times how strong his emotions actually are. His mother clings to him every second of the day, and as soon as she gets sick, he travels across the world for 50 days. That isn't a heartless boy. That's a boy who loves his mummy. Then you get to part 4 with Josuke Higashikata, who is the illegitimate son of Joseph Joestar, who was born through an affair which ruins a lot of what I like about Joseph, but we won't talk about it. He's a fairly average teenage guy. He enjoys playing video games and being around his friends. I like that he takes a lot of his best qualities from Joseph, like his comedy, his mischiefy, and his loyalty to pretty much any one of his friends. Part 5 moves on to Giorno Giovanna, which is... he's not on screen right now, this is Meester. Hold on. Nope, still Meester. Meester, get off the screen. There he is. There he is. That's Giorno. He's the child of Dio Brando, born through Jonathan Joestar's body. Like I said, watch the series. Giorno is probably the community's least favourite Joestar because he's sort of stagnant in his character growth. And that's sort of the point. He knows what he wants. He's confident in his abilities and beliefs. And those abilities help the Bucciarati squad grow. Finally, at least for me, we get to part 6, Stone Ocean, with Jolene Cujo, daughter of Jotaro Kujo. She holds a deep resentment for her father as, for pretty much her entire life, he was absent. She would lash out, break the law, anything to get her father to notice her. She's framed for murder and Jotaro comes to save her. At first she doesn't want to go, but ever so slightly little cracks start forming in that wall and she begins to see that her father really cares for her. Jotaro expresses this love that he's always had for Jolene when it looks like he may die from the Pale Snake fight. From there, Jolene has a fierce determination to save her father. Now she can be quite violent when she needs to be. In one moment she slices a guard's ear off, but in other moments she can be caring and protective of the people closest to her, which is a Joestar standard. Beyond part 6, you have part 7's Johnny Joestar, part 8's Josuke Higashikata. Again, I'm gonna have to figure that out for myself. And part 9's Jodio Joestar. The Joestar lineage is one of the most varied in anime, and I love how every single one of them have different personalities, and additionally, different fans. There isn't really a definitive Joestar. Everyone has their own favourite. Now for me, I have to say Joseph, but I must say the cheating still really hurts his character. And if I had to pick someone beyond that, it would be Jotaro or Josuke. The first one, not part 8. Finally, the best part of the entire series, and where I think JoJo's really got put on the map, the villains. This is where I think if the series hasn't done it for you just yet, this is where it will absolutely click for you. I think the villains in JoJo's are some of the best in fiction, and I don't even think it's close. Araki has stated multiple times that the theming behind the protagonists and villains has always been about the power of humanity. How the Joestars try to uphold and defend humanity, and where the villains always try to defy or destroy humanity. You start at part 1 with Dio, where he uses a stone mask to become a vampire. He also uses that to induct Jack the Ripper into his team, which, I don't know. Also, he's just the biggest hater to Jonathan ever. Like, I have never seen someone hate another person so much for almost no reason. Then in part 2, you have the Pillarmen, who are trying to use the stone mask and the red stone of Asia to become perfect life forms and rule the world. Each of the 3, and 4 if you want to count San Viento, having unique personalities to one another. And I think it works perfectly when you mix them with Joseph and Caesar. I think it's hilarious to watch a guy who is quite literally immortal get bitched by another guy using breathing sun karate.
And an insane amount of luck.
Then you get to part 3 where Dio makes his big return with a stand called that has the ability to stop time for 9 seconds. Realistically, Dio should not have lost to Jotaro, but because Jonathan had always caught him so off guard with his strength, he was too cautious with Jotaro, and that ultimately spelled his demise. His voice actor, by the way, in the English dub is insane. And I'll kind of get into this side tangent now because it won't fit anywhere else. Whether you watch the sub or dub, it doesn't matter too much. I watch the dub and that's okay, right? It's okay. But if you want to be a part of the sort of community jokes a little more, I think sub is the way to go. Because it has moments where the Japanese actors are, you know, doing their normal voice lines and then all of a sudden they'll switch up and start saying English and it'll sound so ridiculous that it becomes even more hilarious.
Nani? Nice, nice! Very nice, Shiza-chan! What was that?
Nice, nice! Real outstanding work, Caesarino.
But the dub has so many amazing voice actors as well.
In a moment, we will find out if I'm prepared to vanquish my past.
We really only grow once we've conquered our phantoms, wouldn't you say?
I really think if you go either side of the pendulum, you're getting a 10 out of 10 experience. Plus, I don't want to read 190 episodes of anime. I'll leave that for the single season stuff, alright? You move on to part 4 from there with, I think, the community's favourite villain, Yoshikage Kira. Kira aims to live a normal life. He aims to fit in with society. He doesn't want to be too exceptional, but he also doesn't want to be too bad at anything either. What's villainous about that, you ask? Oh, nothing. You know, apart from the fact that if his fingernails get too long, he then has to go out and kill someone and then take their hand as a trophy. And he also sort of has a little kink with it too, so, you know, the usual. Kira is one of those cases where the title JoJo's Bizarre Adventure really holds true. I think he's one of the weirdest villains in literally anything ever, and the only reason he ever got beaten is because some chubby fat kid took a lunch bag with one of those severed hands that I mentioned in it. Then you get to part 5, which is playing on the screen right now. And the main villain doesn't show up until just around halfway, which is sort of similar to part 4's villain as well. Diavolo is the boss of the Passione, the biggest crime syndicate in Italy. His character is split into 2 personalities, Diavolo and Doppio. This makes him one of the most entertaining villains of the entire series. Moments like him trying to communicate with Doppio and Doppio making audible telephone noises with his mouth. Then he'll pick up any random item, could be a rock or ice cream, and then use that as a phone. Not only that, but King Crimson, his stand, is one of the most overpowered and coolest stands of the entire show. It also happens to be one of the most confusing stands of the entire show as well. And I've heard that the anime does it a lot better than the manga, so I would recommend the anime to you. Then we finally get to part 6 with what could be my favourite villain of the entire series, Enrico Pucci. Pucci's backstory is probably what sells it for me the most. You get to see his absolute heartbreak at a decision that he made trying to protect his brother and sister, and it really builds his stand and his motivations for the entirety of part 6. I think the 3 abilities that he gets are not only just awesome in their own right, but they also bring some of the best visuals that the series has ever seen. His little quirks like counting prime numbers when he's stressed, and the fact that he's somewhat a disciple of Dio, for one, really makes him a very interesting character, especially along the timeline of JoJo's. But it also helps to build Dio's motivations for part 3. Plus, their forbidden love is the most important part. We all know that Pucci got Jotaro into that prison to get revenge for killing his boyfriend. I love every villain in the show, and I didn't even get to mention the side ones who deserve their praise. I think a big one for me would be Darby the Gambler. That episode in part 3, incredible. And I hope you guys get to watch it very soon. Overall, I just love this series. Like, I've been obsessed with it ever since I finished it. I've been collecting the figures, like I've got Jonathan and Dio there. I've got bits of the manga. I got the first 2 of Steel Ball Run. I've got the entire series that's available in Australia on Blu-ray. I got the art book. I mean, I love the show. I love everything about it. I know that means like I'm one of those annoying people who will only ever recommend JoJo's to someone. And I'm not going to stop now. I mean, if you've made it this far through the video, either you have watched the series or you surely should be by now. Also, if you made it this far through, I just want to say thank you for watching the video. It's been a labor of love making the script and getting to research every little nook and cranny of the series. Also, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, that would be really appreciated. I put a fair chunk of time into this, but I also want to put more time into talking about more things that I get obsessions over. A big one will be movies for me. I've got a bunch back here, I've got a bunch in my wardrobe over there, a bunch in the desk here. I would like to talk about other anime, other games, really anything I'll talk about. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If there's anything that you would like to see more of or less of, or certain topics, just let me know. Anyways, I think I'm going to end the video there, so...
Get back!